Whispers of the Bayou. Chapter 1. Veils of Dawn. Dawn unfurled over Whispering Waters Bayou, the mist curling around the gnarled cypress roots like a shroud. Fennel Peregrine stood at the water's edge, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and the echo of unseen creatures stirring. She faced her supporters, their expressions etched with uncertainty, cast in the soft light filtering through the trees. Behind them loomed the rival group, a wall of indifference and disdain, laughter slicing through the morning calm. Today was pivotal. If she couldn't find her voice here, the truth lurking beneath the bayou would drown beneath the weight of silence. An urgency churned within her, propelling her forward. "Y'all, it's time we come together, like kinfolk should." Fennel's voice rang out, her words tumbling forth, desperate for resonance. She gestured hands slicing through the air, trying to mold the hesitation in the faces before her into resolve. Yet they shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting back to the rival group, who lounged under the drooping branches like predators sizing up their prey. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a mocking grin, leaned against a cypress, arms crossed, dismissing her pleas with a bored flick of his wrist. The weight of their inaction pressed down on her, crushing her resolve. "If we don't speak up now, our tails'll drift away, just like sweet nothings on the breeze." Her voice steadied, rippling with determination. But their eyes went blank, as if they didn't hear her at all. Laughter erupted from the rival group, a harsh noise that broke the fragile tension. "You call that a fight?" The leader jeered, stepping forward, his shadow looming over her. The dismissal stung, a simple act that felt final. Each chuckle from his followers struck her like a slap, leaving her exposed. A flicker of movement in the water drew her gaze, the gentle ripples sharing secrets with the dawn. Fennel squared her shoulders, the weight of isolation pressing heavy, yet familiar. As she stood before the scornful crowd, her resolve began to crystallize. The stories would not fade without a fight. The bayou whispered of resilience, and perhaps, just perhaps, the tide could turn. But as the sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow over the bayou, the question loomed, would she muster the strength to rise, or would she vanish into the shadows like so many before her? Dusk, draped whispers clearing in a muted palette of blues and purples, the fading light filtering through the ancient cypress trees like a gentle whisper. Thick moss clung to the rough stone of the weathered monument at the clearing's center, the air heavy with the damp scent of earth and the sweet perfume of wildflowers blooming defiantly in the shadows. The soft rustle of leaves danced with the distant gurgle of the creek, forming a melancholic symphony that mirrored Fennel's unease. In this sacred space guilt pressed down on her, each pulse a reminder of the faces she couldn't protect. Fennel stepped closer to the monument, her fingers brushing against the cool, cracked surface. The names carved into the stone felt sharp against her skin, reminders of lives lost and stories silenced. The scent of damp earth mingled with floral sweetness, mirroring the turmoil inside her. She swallowed hard, regret bitter on her tongue as the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that urged her to speak, to act. The gentle murmur of the creek lured her deeper into thought, its soothing cadence sharply contrasting with the storm inside her. Her fingers trembled, and her gaze dropped as guilt weighed heavily on her. Fennel's pulse quickened with the sounds of the evening settling in, a distant chorus of crickets and the soft rustle of wildlife awakening. The air grew cooler, wrapping around her, and the moment slipped away. The nearby cypress trees swayed softly, their leaves rustling like whispers among old friends. They stood tall and resolute guardians of the past as the evening deepened. Fennel's resolve wavered, the sounds of nature urging her to embrace her strength while her memories clawed at her, drowning out the gentle encouragement of the wildflowers. As the last light of day surrendered to night, Fennel stood alone in Whisper's clearing, the dusk enveloping her. The weight of her past failures bore down on her, but the whispers of the wildflowers nudged her forward. "Lord, it feels like a great weight settin' on my chest, but those wildflowers, they're like a gentle push, tellin' me to rise and fight on." With every breath she could smell the wet earth, a reminder to keep going, to not give up. The names carved into the stone, once haunting, now challenged her, a call to unmask the conspiracy that had silenced so many. As the dark wrapped round her, she felt a flicker of hope, like a candle fightin' against the wind. Maybe tonight's the night she finally found her voice. Fennel Peregrine stood alone in Whisper's clearing. Her heart thudded, echoing the relentless reminder of her fears. The dusk cast an eerie glow, shadows stretching long and dark, engulfing the last remnants of daylight. Names of those lost echoed in her mind like a relentless drumbeat. If she didn't find the courage to speak out tonight, the conspiracy that silenced her community would tighten its grip before the week's end. 3 days left, 3 days until the world would forget them all again, and she could not let that happen. With a quick glance at the crumbling stone monument at the center, its surface inscribed with the names of the vanished, she steeled her resolve, determined to reclaim their stories and become their voice. The heavy silence of the clearing amplified the doubts gnawing at her. Memories of past failures loomed, each a ghost whispering accusations. You failed them, Fennel. You were supposed to protect them. She clenched her fists until her nails bit into her palms, fighting against the tide of despair. But as the darkness deepened, determination ignited within her. The urgency of her mission sharpened her focus. Every moment wasted felt like a betrayal to the lost and to the very essence of her community. A rustle in the underbrush jolted her from her thoughts, and panic surged. Was it a threat? Or something worse? The fear of being discovered tightened around her throat. She envisioned the consequences of her inaction: more lives lost, more stories buried under silence. Each hesitation exposed her further. Sweat trickled down her back. The coolness of the night air, a chilling reminder that action was imperative. Her resolve hardened as she faced a daunting choice: retreat into fear's shadows or forge ahead, risking everything for those silenced. A vision of her community's future played in her mind, a future silenced by fear and oppression. She could almost hear the voices of the lost calling out to her, their pleas echoing in the twilight. Each name etched in stone served as a reminder of her duty, a rallying cry against the injustice festering in the shadows. The relentless ticking of time urged her forward. Fennel took a deep breath, the air filling her with renewed purpose. No more silence, she whispered, igniting her spirit. She had made her decision. With a final glance at the darkening sky, she turned toward the path leading back to her community, the faintest trace of hope kindling within her. Yet dread coiled in her stomach. What if she couldn't summon the courage? What if the backlash was worse than she imagined? That chilling thought quickened her heartbeat. Time was slipping away, and the shadows were closing in. Dawn unfurled over Whispering Waters Bayou, casting a warm golden light that shimmered on the still surface of the water. Fennel Peregrine stood at the edge of a narrow path. The damp earth clung to her worn boots, reminding her of the resolve she needed to muster. This was the moment she'd chosen, the first light of day, to rally her supporters and raise her voice against the encroaching shadows of fear. The whispers of the bayou echoed her determination, but memories of their last encounter lingered like the mist rising from the water. What if her courage wavered? What if the darkness swallowed her whole? Fennel squared her shoulders and scanned the faces of her supporters. Nervous energy crackled in the thick air, palpable as the humidity wrapping around them. She lifted her chin, a flicker of resolve igniting within her. "Y'all, we can't let 'em hush us up no more." The words tumbled out raw and desperate. But as she spoke, doubt flickered through the crowd. They shifted, glancing toward the looming shadows of the rival group, their presence a dark weight ready to unleash fury. The tension thickened, a sharp contrast to the determination she tried to project. From the edge of the gathering, the rival leader emerged, a figure carved from darkness. His laughter sliced through the morning air, mocking and cold. "Look at you, Fennel. So brave, yet so foolish. Do you really think you can stand against us?" His words dripped with scorn, and Fennel's pulse quickened, a drumbeat of defiance fighting against the laughter echoing in her mind. The faces around her twisted, uncertainty creeping into their resolve, as if the ground beneath them had shifted. They hesitated, the chill of intimidation settling over them. Fennel's hands clenched into fists, nails biting into her palms as she struggled to hold her ground. "We deserve to speak," her voice rang out, but it trembled, a fragile note against the clamor of intimidation. The rival leader stepped closer, his presence a dark shroud. "Speak, or suffer the consequences." The threat hung heavy in the air. Fennel's heart raced, a wild storm within her.
One by one, her supporters turned away, retreating into the shadows, leaving Fennel standing alone against the storm. They had abandoned her, and with them the hope of a united front. Yet beneath the weight of despair, a new fire ignited within her. This was not the end. She would find a way to fight back, to give voice to the silence threatening to consume them all. As the last of her supporters faded into the mist, Fennel remained, a figure resolute against the rising tide of darkness. The bayou whispered secrets around her, and she clenched her fists, determined.
As the sun dipped low, shadows wove through whispers clearing like quiet worries. Fennel stood at the edge of the grove, cool earth grounding her amidst the clamor of her thoughts. The bayou, a familiar haunt, wrapped around her like a shroud, but the solace it once offered had become a distant memory. Memories of her supporters' eager faces flickered like fireflies, soon replaced by the rival leaders' mocking laughter echoing in her mind. She clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms as isolation pressed against her chest. The path ahead was unclear, yet she wasn't going to hide anymore. The fight loomed on the horizon, and a decision beckoned at the edge of her consciousness. The soft rustle of leaves whispered around her, taunting her in the dimming light. Every breath carried the weight of regret, a reminder of the folks who had counted on her but were left disappointed. Fennel turned her gaze to the twisted roots at her feet, jagged and gnarled, much like her own resolve. They had trusted her, and she had faltered. The rival leader's words sliced through her recollections like a blade. "You think you can protect them?" He had scoffed, his voice a sneer that clawed at her insides. She stepped forward, the ground crunching beneath her boots, a tangible reminder of her inadequacies. No more. Drawing a deep breath, she steadied herself against the tide of self-doubt. The air hummed with the scent of damp earth and blooming wildflowers, doing little to soothe the turmoil within. Fennel's pulse raced, a frantic drumbeat heralding the encroaching silence. What if her words fell flat? What if they turned on her? The thought tightened her throat, yet she pressed on, tension coiling in her stomach. She envisioned the faces of her community, the people who had once rallied behind her. A spark ignited in her chest. They deserved more than her silence. They deserved a leader willing to risk it all. She brushed her fingers across her lips, imagining the power of her voice breaking through the stillness, shattering the grip of fear. It was time to confront the conspiracy that threatened them all. Fennel turned to face the bayou, its waters glimmering with fading twilight. "The way I see it, it's time to put my words down on paper, ain't it? Not just words strung together, but a rallying cry, a call to arms for those who had lost their way." The stakes were high, and the risk of isolation loomed larger than ever. If she failed to act, the consequences would be permanent. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but clarity surged within her. She would channel her guilt into strength, her isolation into resolve, no more lingering in the shadows. She squared her shoulders. Chapter 2. Awakening in the Glade. Dawn unfurled over whispering waters Bayou, casting a golden veil over the gnarled cypress trees. Fennel Peregrine stood at the water's edge, dew-soaked grass clinging to her bare feet. The air was thick with the earthy scent of mud and moss, whispers of secrets trapped beneath the surface. Taking a steadying breath, her resolve hardened like the morning light piercing through the fog. The message hid beneath the stones, feeling like a weight in her mind, a promise of truths that might tear apart everything we've built here in the bayou. A shadow flickered in the periphery, a reminder that her quest for truth could ignite danger. The fight had begun, and she would not back down. Fennel crept closer to the creek, pulse thudding in her ears. Each step felt like a betrayal of the silence that enveloped the bayou. She knelt by the water's edge, fingers trembling as she brushed aside the leaves revealing the smooth stone. With my heart racing, I lifted it, feeling the message crumple in my palm. That stone felt heavy, like the truth was trying to drown me right there in the bayou. I unfolded the paper, the ink smudged but legible, familiar names leaped out at her, trust shattered like glass, the sharp edges cutting deep. A betrayal she never saw coming. The sound of rustling leaves jerked her gaze upward. Breath hitched in her throat as the message fell from her grip, fluttering to the ground like a white flag of surrender. Panic surged through her, a flood threatening to consume her.
She scrambled to her feet, scanning the shadows for the source of the sound. The bayou seemed to hold its breath, wildlife hushed in anticipation. Who? How many? The question clawed at her, the answer dancing just out of reach. The footsteps grew louder, a steady rhythm that matched her racing heart. Fennel pressed her back against a tree, its rough bark biting into her skin. The whispers of the water urged her to remain hidden, but the message, her connection to the truth, lay exposed on the ground. Would they see it? Would they understand? The thought twisted like a knife, a primal fear taking root. With each heartbeat, the choice felt more critical: stay hidden and let the truth slip away, or reveal herself and face whatever danger lurked in the shadows. A figure emerged from the mist, tall and imposing. Fennel's pulse quickened, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities. The truth stood before me, like a weapon and a shield at once, but it felt more like a storm cloud ready to burst. The bayou whispered secrets, but they seemed more like a curse.
Dawn unfurled its light over Whispering Waters Bayou, casting a silver sheen on the water. Fennel Peregrine stood at the water's edge, her heart a tempest of emotions as the weight of the anonymous message in her pocket pressed down on her. She couldn't shake the unsettling implications swirling in her mind, like shadows in the murky depths below, a storm brewing deep down in the bayou. Confronting the dominant group that held sway over her community loomed dauntingly before her, but the fear of exposing her past mistakes gnawed at her resolve. What could she possibly do? Fennel unfolded the message, her fingers trembling. The words blurred with memories of silence while injustice thrived. The whispers of her ancestors echoed in her mind, urging her to uncover the truth. But what if they retaliated? What if her actions endangered her loved ones? The rising sun intensified her urgency, suffocating her in dread. Time was slipping away, and she felt her thoughts racing as the enormity of her choices pressed upon her. The bayou's murmur grew louder, winding through her thoughts, a reminder of the price of inaction. Only 3 days remained before dark forces would strike, solidifying their grip on her community's narratives. Sweat trickled down her back, a testament to her turmoil. What if I mess up again? The question clawed at her resolve as she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the water, a ghost of her former self, lost to fear. The ripples distorted her image, and she felt the urgency to act before the truth sank beneath the surface, lost forever. A rustle in the underbrush startled her, and Fennel's breath hitched. Was someone watching? The thought sent a jolt of adrenaline through her, prompting her to crouch low, pulse quickening. The danger felt real, wrapping around her like the vines of the bayou. She had to rise to the challenge and stand against the dominant group threatening everything she held dear. But could she do it alone? Time was slipping away, and she needed to act. Fennel took a deep breath, forcing herself to stand tall. In that moment, a decision crystallized. She would confront the truth, no matter the cost. The faces of those who had vanished swirled in her mind, propelling her forward. Yet fear still clawed at her insides. What if the dominant group retaliated? The stakes were high, and she felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her. As she turned to leave the creek, footsteps approached from behind, quickening her pulse. Who was there? The danger loomed ever closer. She was running out of time, and she needed to act, now. Whispers clearing thrummed with tension as Fennel Peregrine stepped into the sun-dappled glade, where ancient cypress trees cloaked in moss surrounded the gathering. The atmosphere buzzed with urgency, every rustle of leaves mirroring the unease of the townsfolk. 3 days left, just 3 days before the conspiracy entwined in their community could solidify, leaving her and everyone she cared for powerless against the tide of silence. Panic clawed at her insides, each rapid heartbeat echoing the feeling of time slipping through her fingers like sand. The crowd murmured around her, their voices rising and falling like the wind, but the sounds faded into a distant hum. All she could replay in her mind was the anonymous message that had shattered her world: unmask the truth or lose everything. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of fear weaving through those gathered in the clearing. The weight of their expectations bore down on Fennel, forcing her breath into shallow gasps. What if she stood up to them? What if she revealed the conspiracy tightening around their community? The thought sent a jolt through her, quickly extinguished by the fear of retaliation. They'd come for her before. What would stop them now? If she hesitated, the consequences could be permanent, haunted by the ghosts of her inaction. An old friend, Elias,
stepped closer, concern etched on his face. "Fennel, sugar, it ain't just about us anymore. It's the kids we gotta think about. If we don't stand up now, they'll be growing up in a world where this mess just keeps on going. We can't let that happen, darlin'." His words sparked a flicker of resolve within her, but her stomach twisted with fear. "But what if they come for us again? What if the folks turn against us like they did before?" she whispered, her voice trembling, yet a new determination flickered within her. Elias took her hand, his grip firm and steady. "Then we fight. Together. But we have to make our move before the week ends. We need to be the voice of change, Fennel. We need to reclaim our narrative, or it will be stolen from us forever." The urgency in his voice pulled her from the abyss of doubt. The clock ticked with deafening urgency, a constant reminder of their dwindling time. She could feel the heat of her fear mixed with a growing conviction. Looking into his eyes, she saw the truth reflected back at her. They had to act and face the storm head on. Fennel swallowed hard, the weight of her decision crashing down around her. The whispers of the crowd surged like a tide, and she felt their hope mixed with trepidation. "All right," she said, her voice stronger now. "We confront them, but we do it tonight, in the heart of their gathering. If we wait any longer, we won't just lose our chance, we'll lose our community." A murmur of agreement rippled through the...
Dawn broke over Whisper's clearing, casting a muted glow across the sun-dappled glade. Ancient cypress trees draped in moss stood sentinel around the weathered stone monument at the center, a relic of forgotten struggles and vanished lives. A soft breeze rustled the vibrant wildflowers, their colors defiantly bright against the backdrop of an impending confrontation. Fennel Peregrine stood before a gathering crowd, urgency coursing through her veins. "Y'all, we gotta face this conspiracy head on. Those folks that went missing, they deserve justice, and we can't just sit here waiting any longer." Her voice rang out, slicing through the morning mist, but the fear in the crowd was palpable, thick as the fog lingering around them. Fennel's breath quickened, her determination battling the whispers of doubt emanating from the crowd. Faces turned toward her, some glimmering with resolve while others were clouded by skepticism. "You think we can just march into the lion's den?" A voice called out, laced with mistrust. "What if they come for us next?" The murmur of dissent surged like a tide, and Fennel's heart sank at the sight of their unity fraying, hesitation flickering across their faces. Pressing on, she steadied her voice despite the turmoil within her. "We can't let fear run our lives, y'all. It's not just about them that went missing, it's for our children too." A woman stepped forward, her face pale and eyes wide. "And what if you're wrong, Fennel? What if this is a trap? We could lose everything." Her words landed heavily, and Fennel's stomach twisted. She glanced at the sky, the first rays of sunlight creeping closer to the horizon, a reminder of their dwindling time. "We can't afford to wait. Every moment we hesitate, more lives are at risk." The crowd shifted restlessly, voices clashing like swords in a desperate duel. "You don't understand," Fennel shouted, her voice strained. "If we don't act now, we're not just losing ourselves, we're losing our history." But dissent drowned her out, and one by one they turned away, their expressions clouded by fear. Fennel stood alone in the clearing, frustration and urgency surging within her as she clenched her fists. She had come to galvanize them, yet she was left standing amidst the sunlight, illuminating the path to uncertainty. She called after the dispersing crowd, her voice quaking, "We still have time. We can still fight." But her words fell flat, swallowed by the rising tide of panic. As silence enveloped her, a single thought pierced through the fog. She had to find another way to rally them, and fast. Dawn broke over Whisper's clearing, casting a soft golden glow on the gathered townsfolk. The air thickened with tension, the scent of damp earth mingling with vibrant wildflowers that bloomed defiantly in the shadows of oppression. Fennel Peregrine stood before them, her pulse thudded in her ears. She needed them to unite against the conspiracy threatening their very existence, to rise up before the week slipped into silence and fear. Each second echoed like a drumbeat, amplifying the urgency of their situation. If they didn't act soon, the chance to reclaim their stories and their safety would vanish, swallowed by the shadows of the dominant group. Fennel cleared her throat, her voice steady despite the tremor within. "Y'all, we need to come together now, 'cause this here conspiracy is like a stubborn weed in our garden. If we don't pull it out quick, we could lose everything we cherish, I reckon."
She scanned the crowd, desperate for a flicker of hope in their eyes. But doubt hung in the air like a heavy fog, thickening with every passing moment. Just as a spark of resolve flickered among them, a voice cut through the morning air. "And what if you're wrong, Fennel? What if this is just your fantasy?" The townsfolk turned, their eyes shifting uneasily towards the skeptic, a man known for his charm and smooth words. The skeptic strode forward, a confident smile plastered on his face. "You think the conspiracy is real? Look around you. We've lived peacefully, without any threats. Why risk our safety for a ghost story?" His words slithered into the hearts of the people like poison, igniting fear and uncertainty. Fennel's stomach knotted, familiar faces shifting away, whispers of dissent rippling through the crowd. If they didn't rally now, their chance would fade, leaving them vulnerable and exposed. "I don't reckon you'll see just how deep the waters run, do ya?" Fennel shouted, desperation creeping into her voice. "If we just sit on our hands, we might get left in the dust, and by the week's end, our chance could slip right through our fingers."
Chapter 3 Shadows in the Clearing. Fennel Peregrine stepped into Whisper's clearing where the morning light sliced through the trees like a blade. The sun filtered through ancient cypress, casting dappled patterns on the ground where vibrant wildflowers bloomed defiantly amidst the shadows. The atmosphere buzzed with urgency and resilience as Fennel scanned the area, searching for locals who might share whispers of the conspiracy threatening her community. Time was against her. Unmasking the plot before the week ended was her only hope to protect her people. The ticking clock echoed in her mind, each second a reminder that the truth could slip away at any moment. Today would be the day she gathered the information she desperately needed, no matter the cost. Fennel approached a group of locals huddled together, her breath quickening. They looked up, eyes wide with a mix of hope and fear. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, a shadow loomed over her. Anton, a member of the dominant cultural group, stood there, his face a mask of hostility. "What do you think you're doing here, Peregrine?" His voice dripped with contempt, slicing through the fragile air. Fennel's pulse thudded in her ears. Danger loomed closer. She forced her voice to remain steady, though uncertainty gnawed at her. "I'm just here to listen, darling. Figured I'd get a sense of what's stirring round these parts." Anton stepped closer, narrowing the distance between them. "Listen up, girl. You think you're going to spin some yarns and come out on top? You're treading in dangerous waters, Peregrine. This ain't a game." His breath was hot against her skin, and the threat hung heavy in the air. Panic constricted her throat. Every instinct screamed to flee, but retreating now would mean abandoning her people. Time bore down on her, amplifying her fear with each passing moment. "I'm not afraid of you, Anton. I'm doing this for my community." She stood her ground, but doubt lingered in the back of her mind. "For your community?" Anton laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the clearing. "You think they'll back you? You'll be alone when the backlash comes. You're risking your safety, Fennel. You have until the end of the week to drop this, or I'll make sure you regret it. You think your little plan is going to save anyone?" His words were a chilling ultimatum, sinking into her like poison. Fennel's breath quickened, the weight of his threat pressing down on her. The urgency of the situation sharpened her senses, amplifying the stakes. With a defiant glare, Fennel took a step back, her mind racing. She couldn't afford to show weakness, not now. The townsfolk would be more vulnerable than ever if she didn't act soon. She turned her gaze toward the deeper woods, where secrets lay buried. What choice did she have? Risk everything to uncover the truth, or remain silent and watch her community crumble? Fennel turned away from Anton, heart racing, ready to plunge into the unknown. Time slipped through her fingers like sand, and she had to decide now. What awaited her in those shadows? As dusk settled over Whisper's clearing, Fennel Peregrine sat at the edge, enveloped by the thick humidity of the bayou. The air was saturated with the earthy scent of damp soil and moss, a reminder of their community's enduring struggles. Ancient cypress trees loomed like guardians, their gnarled roots twisting into the ground, holding on to secrets of the past. At the heart of the glade, a crumbling stone monument stood resolute, bearing the names of those long forgotten, while vibrant wildflowers defiantly pushed through the shadows. This place, filled with both urgency and resilience, echoed with whispers of dissent. Yet Fennel wrestled with their memories of past failures which swirled around them like the mist rising from the bayou. This bayou feels heavy like a fog that clouds my thoughts. Fennel murmured, their voice barely rising above the rustle of leaves. The oppressive atmosphere amplified the chaos within, forcing them to confront a choice, challenge the suffocating norms or seek refuge in the shadows. The gnawing uncertainty left them restless, torn between the desire for safety and the urge to fight for change. I reckon it's time I face what haunts me, or I'll never find peace in this tangled mess. Fennel continued, their voice steadying as they gazed at the monument. Leadership weighed heavily on their mind, yet the pull of safety was strong. It's a choice between fighting for what's right or retreating into my shell like a scared turtle. Voicing their inner conflict felt like a declaration, an attempt to lighten the burden they carried. Fennel took a deep breath, the bayou's damp air grounding them in the moment. The clearing felt alive with possibility and danger as they contemplated their next move. They sensed the whispers of their ancestors urging them to choose courage over fear. With newfound determination, they stood, ready to confront the oppressive forces that loomed over their life. The choice had been made, to stand for justice, no matter the cost. Fennel stood at the edge of Whisper's clearing as dusk settled, shadows stretching like dark fingers across the ground, whispering doubts that clawed at her resolve. The fading light pressed against her back, urging her to step forward and confront the fears that had haunted her for too long. If she didn't rally the locals against the oppressive forces threatening their stories, the consequences would spiral beyond her control. The clock ticked mercilessly in her mind. If she failed to unmask the conspiracy before the week was out, everything she loved would slip through her fingers. An air of urgency hung in the clearing, infused with the scent of damp earth and the distant sound of water flowing from a nearby creek, echoing the tension of the moment as vibrant wildflowers bloomed defiantly in the gathering gloom. The air thickened with tension, each breath a struggle against the weight of her past mistakes. What am I going to do now? The thought of retreating gnawed at her, a siren's call luring her back into the shadows, but retreat meant surrendering the very stories she fought to protect. A rustle shattered the stillness, and Fennel's pulse quickened. The shadows thickened, squeezing her resolve as the eager faces of children flashed in her mind, their hopes resting on her shoulders. The flicker of doubt threatened to extinguish the flicker of courage she had kindled. A flash of movement caught her eye. Anton's silhouette emerged from the edge of the forest, looking worn and shadowed with concern. "Fennel, darlin', we ain't got much time left, sugar," he urged, urgency lacing his tone. "If you don't act now, we lose everything." His words cut through her haze, a stark reminder of the stakes. 3 days left until the conspiracy went unchallenged, and the oppressive force would tighten its grip. Fennel's breath hitched, a mixture of fear and determination coursing through her. A cold wave washed over Fennel. She could either step into the darkness and confront her fears, or watch her community crumble beneath the weight of ignorance. She drew in a deep breath, her heart racing in her chest. "Well, I reckon I might just give it a shot if it pleases y'all," she declared, her voice steady despite the chaos inside her. "We will stand up against them. We will share our stories." But as she turned to rally the locals, a figure emerged from the trees, a sinister grin twisting their face. "You think you can fight this?" they sneered, and Fennel's resolve wavered as doubt crept into her mind. Dusk settled into Whisper's clearing like a patient predator, dimming the vibrant hues of the bayou and casting long shadows across Fennel Peregrine's heart. She stood frozen, thoughts whirling around the future of her community. The threat loomed if she failed to unmask the conspiracy before the week's end. Irreversible consequences awaited. The locals needed her to inspire hope and reclaim their narrative, but uncertainty clung to her like a second skin. Every tick of the clock reverberated through her, a relentless reminder of their dwindling chances. She had to rally them, to turn their fear into strength, but how? The sounds of the bayou enveloped her, the croaking frogs and rustling leaves whispering tales of past failures. Fennel's thoughts spiraled back to the last confrontation, a shattering reminder of what occurred when she stepped into the light.
The townsfolk had looked to her for guidance, but all they found was her hesitation. "What if I lead them into danger?" she murmured, fear tightening its grip on her resolve. The darkening shadows mocked her, and she clenched her fists, fighting against the tide of uncertainty. No, she wouldn't let history repeat itself. Not again. "We can't just sit here." Tamsin's voice broke through her tumultuous thoughts. Her old friend's eyes were wide with urgency. "They think we'll just hide away, but we can't let 'em see us scared. We gotta move, Fennel, or it'll be too late." The urgency in her tone mirrored Fennel's own racing heart. Every second wasted felt like a step closer to the abyss. "If we act recklessly, it's not just our lives at stake, but the stories of everyone here." Fennel shot back, her voice strained under the weight of responsibility. Time pressed against her, a relentless reminder of their dwindling chances. "We gotta figure out who's behind this mess, Fennel." Tamsin pressed, desperation lacing her words. 3 days. That's all we have left. If we wait, we lose everything. Bitterness coated Fennel's tongue. She staggered slightly, the weight of leadership pulling her down. What if she led them into a trap? She met Tamsin's pleading gaze, and a spark of resolve began to ignite within her. They could not afford inaction, not now. In that moment, clarity pierced through the fog of her anxiety. Fennel drew a deep breath, filling her lungs with the musty air of the bayou, and exhaled the doubt. "We gotta face 'em, but we can't just charge in blind. We'll share our stories, the truth's our best shot, you know? Let's gather the folks and stand strong against what's coming, all right?" A fire ignited in her chest, pushing back the shadows that had loomed for too long. But just as determination surged within her, the sinister figure from before emerged from the trees again, a mocking smirk curling their lips. "You really think you can change anything?" they taunted, and Fennel's heart sank.
Dusk settled over Whisper's clearing, casting elongated shadows that seemed to pulse with tension. The damp earth carried the scent of rain, a reminder of the storm both above and within. Fennel Peregrine paced the clearing, replaying her recent confrontation with the sinister figure lurking at the edge of their community. Time was slipping away, just 3 days to rally the locals and unmask the hidden threat before it engulfed them. A knot of uncertainty twisted in her gut. Could she protect those she loved? Fennel halted abruptly, a memory crashing over her like a wave. The last time she had stepped up to protect her community, chaos had ensued. Frightened voices echoed in her mind, her friends defeated. It haunted her. She clenched her fists, pushing back against the rising tide of fear. No, that couldn't happen again. Yet the shadows loomed, and the relentless ticking of time reminded her that she had only 3 days to act. Would they trust her this time? Would they follow her into danger? She glanced toward the tree line, her heart racing. What if gathering the locals only placed them in greater peril? The figure's mocking words echoed in her thoughts. "You really think you can change anything?" What if she was wrong? Gathering them could lead to more loss. She took a deep breath, but it felt insufficient. The stakes were monumental, and retreat was not an option, not again. A flicker of resolve ignited within her. As she paced, a plan began to take shape, even as doubt gnawed at her. Each second felt like an eternity, a reminder of the danger approaching. Gathering the locals was crucial, but how could she persuade them when her own heart trembled? She envisioned their faces, hopeful yet apprehensive. They needed to see the power of their unity, the strength in their shared stories. It was now or never. She had to rally them before the week slipped away. Fennel inhaled deeply, the air sharp with the scent of damp earth and rain. "I reckon it's about time to gather everyone, for them shadows come creeping in and take what's ours," she murmured with urgency, turning toward the path back to the village. Her feet moved almost of their own accord, but just as she reached the edge of the clearing, a low growl from the shadows halted her. She glanced back, dread settling heavily in her chest. The figure emerged, eyes glinting with malice. "You're too late, Fennel. They won't follow you, and you'll pay the price for trying." The clock of fate ticked ominously in her mind. She had to choose: confront this threat alone, or risk everything by gathering the locals. Time was not on her side. Chapter 4: Embers in Shadow. The growl reverberated, a harsh reminder of the shadows lingering at the edge of Fennel's resolve. She pivoted toward Whisper's clearing, where sunlight filtered through the canopy above, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. Today this place, usually a sanctuary, pulsed with urgency. Each step felt heavier, as though the ground warned her to turn back. Yet determination ignited her blood. The hidden document, the truth, beckoned her. In the clearing, her mentor loomed, a woman half hidden by swaying fronds of wild ferns. Fennel took a deep breath,
feeling the damp earth wrap around her, and approached, her voice steady but laced with a tremor of defiance. "I reckon it's time you told me what you're holding back." The mentor's gaze flickered, a fleeting shadow crossing her face, betraying the calm she tried to project. "Some truths are better left in the dark, Fennel. You don't understand the power they wield." Her words dripped with caution, as if the air itself might carry them to the very ears they feared. Fennel clenched her fists, the rough bark of the tree behind her digging into her back. She wasn't here to back down. "You always said I should seek the truth. Why would you keep it from me now?" Her voice rose, filling the clearing with a challenge. The trees seemed to lean in, listening. "What's hidden can destroy us all. You must tread lightly. They are watching." Fennel stepped closer, closing the distance between them with each determined stride. "I can handle it," she insisted, though doubt gnawed at her resolve. A flicker of something fear crossed her mentor's face, and Fennel inhaled sharply as the humid air thickened with unspoken warnings. "What if it's too late?" her mentor murmured, her voice trembling. The weight of inaction pressed on Fennel, obscuring her thoughts. "I can't stand by and let them dictate our lives." The mentor sighed, her shoulders sagging with a heart weighed down by concern. "Fennel, you're brave, but bravery can lead to recklessness. The document holds secrets that could unravel everything we've built. You're risking more than your safety. You're risking the very fabric of our community." Her eyes bore into Fennel's, pleading for understanding. A knot twisted in Fennel's stomach, coiling tighter with every passing second. Could she bear the consequences, yet the thought of ignoring the truth gnawed at her, an insatiable hunger for justice. "Please, just tell me what that document holds," she insisted, desperation creeping into her tone. His silence lingered, thick and oppressive. Then, with a heavy tone, she spoke. "It reveals our past, the injustices we've suffered, but it also names names, those in power who would not hesitate to silence."
Dusk draped Whisper's clearing in a shawl of deepening shadows, where the last embers of sunlight flickered like dying fireflies. The air, heavy with the smell of damp earth and blooming wildflowers, wrapped around Fennel like a comforting embrace, yet it seemed deceptive. Ancient cypress trees loomed like silent sentinels, their gnarled trunks draped with ghostly moss that swayed softly in the gentle breeze. The slow murmur of the nearby creek echoed soothingly, a melancholic lullaby contrasting sharply with the tumult in her heart. Here, at the edge of uncertainty, the crumbling stone monument stood resolute, a testament to the forgotten stories of her people, its rough surface warm beneath her fingertips as she traced the faded names inscribed upon it, grounding her in the weight of their histories. As the last rays of the sun surrendered to twilight, her breath caught shadows coiling like tendrils around her. The vibrant wildflowers, defiantly blooming in shades of violet and gold, seemed to mock her indecision, whispering secrets of rebellion into the cooling air. Each rustle of leaves sent a jolt through her, reminding her of the urgency that clung to the twilight, like the thick fog rolling in from the bayou. A sudden chill coursed through her, the bitter taste of regret lingering on her tongue, a stark reminder of the consequences of action versus inaction. The sound of the creek, a steady trickle, mingled with the distant calls of night creatures. Crickets began their symphony, their rhythm punctuated by the occasional splash of a fish breaking the surface, a reminder that life thrived even as darkness fell. Fennel pressed her palms against the cool stone, feeling its jagged edges bite into her skin, a reminder of the cost of silence. A breeze swept through the clearing, carrying the scent of wet moss, sharp and earthy, stirring a flash of childhood memories, her mother's laughter, the tales of struggle and resilience woven into their family history. As she stood there, caught between the past and the uncertain future, a sudden rustle in the underbrush yanked her from her reverie. A frantic rhythm echoed in her ribcage. Someone was there, watching her, cloaked in the shadows of the cypress trees. The weight of their gaze pressed on her, a warm pressure mingling with the cool evening air. Fennel hesitated, her breath short, as fear tightened around her throat like a noose. The whispers of the bayou faded as she strained to hear anything beyond the thrum of her racing pulse, the world narrowing to the unknown presence lurking just out of sight. The tension at the edge of the dim light, her pulse quickened as her mentor's revelations settled heavily on her. The shadows thickened around Whisper's clearing, cradling Fennel in their embrace. The trees swayed gently, and the creek bubbled energetically, infusing a sense of vibrancy into the gathering dusk. The resilient wildflowers, defiantly blooming against the encroaching night, whispered of buried truths. Each breath tasted urgent, a blend of trepidation and resolve swirling in the twilight. Caught in the web of her thoughts, she remained still, the darkness deepening around her, amplifying the urgency within. Fennel scanned the clearing, her eyes darting between the trees, each rustle echoing her fears. The tension in the air thickened with the weight of betrayal. She clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms, struggling to find an anchor against the rising tide of uncertainty. Echoes of her family's sacrifices flooded her mind, her mother's laughter, her father's quiet strength. Keeping my mouth shut's heavier than a lead weight, but I can't let fear silence me. Not now, she whispered to herself, determination simmering beneath the surface. The creek's murmurs shifted, stirring memories. Her father's stories echoed in her mind, tales of courage and rebellion. Each word sparked the embers of her resolve, igniting a flicker of determination within. Allies waited just beyond the trees, but trust dangled like a fragile thread. The dominant group was cunning and ruthless. A wrong move could cost everything. Still, the thought of standing alone gnawed at her gut, an insistent ache. She needed to act. Time slipped like sand through her fingers, urgency clawing at her throat. With a deep breath, Fennel stepped forward, the cool grass brushing against her bare feet. Every step felt like a little rebellion against the dark, like she was pushing back against something that wanted to swallow her whole. Whispers of dissent filled the air, urging her onward. She had to confront her fears, though doubt coiled around her heart like a serpent. The weight of uncertainty pressed in, but she couldn't remain in the shadows. As she emerged from the last of the gloom, a haunting image settled in her mind, her family's faces, alive with encouragement, pushing her forward. The creek's whispers grew louder, intertwining with the flutter of her heart. A choice awaited her, a path to forge through the darkness. Would she let fear dictate her fate? The night wrapped around her like a cloak, and for the first time she welcomed it. As the stars began to prick the sky, a question lingered in the air. Could she bear the weight of the truth? Dawn crept into Whisper's clearing, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink, a fragile light breaking the lingering shadows of night. Fennel stood at the edge of the clearing, her breath visible in the crisp morning air. The creek's whispers danced around her, a bittersweet reminder of her family's faces, their laughter echoing in her thoughts. Fear coiled tightly in her stomach, but resolve flickered like a stubborn flame. If she didn't confront the figure lurking in the underbrush, everything she cherished would dissolve into the oppressive silence of the regime. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, determination clawing at her throat, ready to face whatever awaited her in the shadows. A shape darted between two trees, a flicker of movement that sent her heart racing. Fennel froze, instinct screaming for her to retreat. Yet the whispers of her family's memory urged her on. She crept closer, every muscle tense, each step defying the fear wrapping around her like vines. The figure paused, silhouetted against the dawn, and for a moment the world around her faded. She recognized the stance, the way they held themselves, poised yet wary. "I see you," she called, her southern drawl lilting through the morning air, concern woven through her challenge. Fennel, the figure stepped into the light, revealing a face she thought lost to the shadows, Hawthorne. His eyes were wide, reflecting urgency, and he raised a hand in greeting, yet the tension in his posture spoke volumes. I didn't think. His voice trailed off, laced with both relief and apprehension. "What in tarnation are you doing here?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. He hesitated, and the truth hung between them like a blade. "I came to warn you, Fennel. The Council's got wind of your plans, and they're on the hunt." Panic threatened to bubble over, and she clenched her fists, nails biting into her palm. The Council, her enemies had eyes everywhere. "You shouldn't have come," she said, vulnerability creeping in despite her best efforts. Hawthorne's expression softened, yet fear darkened his gaze. "They're hunting me too. We're not safe. They'll kill you if they find out." His words settled in her chest, heavy and foreboding. Trust ain't something I can gamble with anymore, but the memories of what they once shared flickered in her mind. "We can fight back," he urged, desperation threading his voice. "Together."
but images of betrayal flickered in her mind, allies turned to spies, friends to enemies. The dawn light illuminated the clearing, revealing scattered remnants of their childhood, yet warmth felt like a distant memory, eclipsed by a growing sense of doubt. Could she risk it? Fennel's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the sun began its ascent, a blazing.
Dusk draped itself over Whisper's clearing, the fading sunlight filtering through thick cypress branches and casting playful shadows on the earthen floor. Fennel inhaled the rich, damp scent of earth mingling with the sweet perfume of wildflowers blooming defiantly in the underbrush. The air thickened with whispers of nature and unspoken truths, the gentle rustle of leaves and melodic gurgle of the nearby creek forming a haunting harmony. Her fingers brushed against the rough surface of the crumbling stone monument, each crack and crevice a testament to the forgotten. She faced her ally, the urgency of their mission evident in her determined stance. "We can't just let this go, Maris." Fennel's voice broke the soft evening hush, trembling with a mix of fear and fervor. She stepped closer, the coolness of the moss beneath her feet grounding her as she leaned against the ancient stone, its texture rough and unyielding. "Every name here tells a tale, a life snuffed out like a candle in the wind. We gotta dig deep and shine a light on it, you know." A flicker of doubt crossed Maris's face, her figure appearing smaller against the towering trees. The whispers of the bayou felt louder now, as if the very spirits of the past were urging them to act. Maris shook her head, her gaze darting to the darkening paths beyond the glade. "But Fennel, what if they come for us? What if we end up in their crosshairs?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, lost amidst the distant murmurs of the creek. The tension crackled, the sun's last rays slipping away into the chill of impending night. Fear hung in the air, metallic and bitter, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp ground. Fennel stepped back, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "You know it's the right thing to do?" She clenched her fists, the rough stone monument digging into her palms, a physical reminder of the struggle they faced. "These walls have witnessed our pain, our resilience. We have to stand for our people, for the ones who can't speak for themselves." The shadows deepened around them, wrapping tighter, as if the trees themselves were closing in, listening intently to their debate. Just as her plea sparked hope, a sudden rustle in the bushes sent a jolt through her, transforming familiar sounds of nature into something ominous. The silence that followed felt heavy and suffocating, Fennel's heart quickening. She strained to listen, the gentle trickle of the creek now overshadowed by an unsettling stillness, a pregnant pause before the storm. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Maris's wide eyes mirrored her own panic, shadows morphing into specters of their doubts. The air thickened with tension. The trees seemed to hold their breath, the clearing shifting from a sanctuary of resilience to a... Chapter 5: Echoes of Empowerment. Dawn broke over Whispering Waters Bayou, a soft glow slicing through the mist that clung to the cypress trees like secrets. Fennel stood at the water's edge, breath shallow as the moisture-laden air mingled the scents of decay and life. Shadows flickered in the underbrush, reminders of traps set by the dominant cultural group, mechanisms of control lurking beneath the surface. I gripped my little dagger tight, the chill of the metal steadying my racing pulse. Each throb resonated with the urgency of my mission. My allies' life hung in the balance, and I was their only hope. The bayou whispered secrets, heavy like the fog, pushing me deeper into the danger, settled deep in my bones. Fennel crept along the narrow path, senses heightened. Each rustle of leaves set her on edge, the soft squelch of mud beneath her boots echoed like a countdown. She scanned the murky water, searching for signs of life, but the bayou remained a watchful guardian, shrouding its mysteries. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a flash of silver glinting in the underbrush. Traps, she froze, pulse raced as she studied the crude mechanisms crafted from twisted vines and sharp metal. They lay in wait, ready to ensnare the unwary. With a deep breath she sidled past them, each step a careful negotiation between stealth and urgency. The tension prickled like static in the air. A sudden snap wood splintering underfoot made her heart lurch. Instinct kicked in. She lunged to the side, narrowly avoiding the razor-sharp teeth of a trap that clamped shut behind her with a menacing crunch. Stumbling, she caught herself against a gnarled tree. Voices, gruff and commanding, echoed in the distance. Guards, closing in, alerted by the commotion. Panic welled within her, but she forced it down, focusing on the task at hand.
Time felt like sand slipping through her fingers. She had to move. Every instinct urged her to flee. The thought of her allies' vulnerability anchored her. She darted deeper into the bayou, weaving through the trees, desperate to outpace the guards. The underbrush snagged at her clothes, the damp earth clinging to her boots as if to pull her back. A cacophony of wildlife enveloped her, a chaotic backdrop to her escape. As she reached a clearing, a figure emerged from the shadows, an ally bound and gagged, eyes wide with alarm. Relief surged through her, but urgency rushed back. She had to free them, but the guards were closer now, their voices a low growl reverberating through the air. Fennel's hands trembled as she fumbled with the ropes binding her ally, the stubborn knots resisting her frantic efforts. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, grew nearer, a relentless reminder of the moments slipping away. Would they uncover the truth before
dawn broke over Whisper's clearing, the first light illuminating the ancient cypress trees draped in moss, their gnarled branches reaching out like the arms of forgotten ancestors. Fennel Peregrine stood at the edge of the clearing, her pulse quickening as she spotted her mentor's ally, bound and exposed at the center. The cultural group surrounding him had set their trap well. Their sneering faces loomed like dark clouds overhead. She had only 3 days until the week's end. Failure was not an option. If she didn't act soon, the secrets that could unravel everything would be laid bare, and a powerful enemy would silence their stories forever. Fennel crouched behind a gnarled tree, damp earth cool beneath her palms. The guards were too many, their laughter echoing ominously in the stillness. Each taunt aimed at her ally felt like a knife twisting in her gut. She had come to reclaim their narrative before it slipped into the hands of those who would distort it. Time slipped away, each second feeling like a countdown to disaster, and she wrestled with the choice before her, charge in recklessly or wait for an opening that might never come. The shouting intensified, and Fennel's pulse quickened. "We know the truth. We will expose you all," her allies shouted defiantly. But the smug smiles of the cultural members only grew wider. Panic surged within her. If they revealed the secrets, her mentor's legacy would be shattered, and the stories they fought to protect would be lost. Just then a guard glanced her way, and she froze, breath hitching. Had he seen her, no time left for indecision. Fennel surged forward, adrenaline igniting her limbs. She darted from cover, her feet pounding against the forest floor. But as she neared her ally, 2 guards stepped into her path, their eyes cold and calculating. "Going somewhere?" one sneered, blocking her way. She skidded to a halt, doubt creeping in. They were ready for her, and with each second that passed, she could almost hear the seconds slipping away. "Step aside," she shouted, her voice steady, masking the turmoil inside her. But they laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Her allies' cries echoed in her head, urging her to act, yet every option felt like a trap. A strike could mean her capture, but retreating felt like abandoning the only hope they had left. As the guards advanced, Fennel turned, a heavy feeling of defeat settling in her chest as she retreated into the shadows of the trees. The echoes of laughter clawing at her resolve as she fled. She had come to save a friend, but faced the unbearable truth. The secrets were already at risk, and she hadn't even begun to formulate a plan to protect them. With her mentor's legacy on her shoulders, dusk settled over Whisper's clearing, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and the rustle of leaves. The vibrant wildflowers, defiant against the encroaching shadows, cast a soft glow in the dying light. Fennel Peregrine raced toward the heart of danger, each beat thudding louder in her chest, a reminder that time was slipping away. She had less than a week to unmask the conspiracy threatening her mentor's legacy. Failure now would expose secrets buried deep within the community, putting her ally, a wise elder, bound and vulnerable at imminent risk. Fennel had to act quickly to save him before the sun dipped below the horizon, before the cultural group could silence generations of stories. The tension in the air mirrored the urgency of her mission as she pushed forward into the clearing, where danger lurked. As she burst into the clearing, a knot of dread settled in her stomach. Her ally was surrounded by members of the cultural group, their sneers sharp as knives. "Back away, Fennel," one of them shouted, waving a crude dagger. "We know your mentor's secrets, and we will expose them. Your choice. Step back, or watch him suffer. You have 3 hours until the sun sets, and then it's too late." The ultimatum hung in the air, and her breath hitched, sweat trickling down her forehead. Could she risk her ally's life to protect her mentor's past?
Thoughts collided in Fennel's mind as she weighed her options, every second stretched before her, the weight of failure pressing down on her like a stone. Rushing in would do no good. The group was ruthless, and she knew that acting without a plan would only escalate the situation. "You think your mentor can save you?" One of them laughed, stepping closer to the elder, who struggled against his bonds. "We will reveal everything. Your stories, your lies, your legacy will crumble. You have until the week ends, Fennel. Choose wisely." The stakes felt higher than ever, and her determination surged as she considered her next move. A dangerous urgency twisted in Fennel's gut. She could hear her mentor's voice echoing, urging her to reclaim their narrative. "You're running out of time," the group taunted, their laughter mingling with the rustling leaves, mocking her hesitation. If she did nothing, her ally would pay the price. Yet, charging in without a strategy would surely backfire. Time slipped away, and Fennel's pulse quickened, each thump echoing in her ears. Clenching her fists, she glanced back at the clearing's edge where shadows lurked, searching for a way to distract them and create a moment of confusion. "Y'all ain't taking him from me, not if I can help it. I swear it on the stories of my people," she shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos. With a deep breath, Fennel darted toward the trees, adrenaline igniting her resolve. "Hey now, y'all, over this way. Come on if you're brave enough."
As dusk enveloped Whisper's clearing, the weight of impending doom pressed heavily in the thick air. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the ground that grasped at Fennel Peregrine like desperate hands. She darted through the underbrush, her heart racing with each rustle of leaves, a reminder of the guards closing in. Whispers of her mentor's legacy intertwined with the twilight, thick with secrets and danger. Adrenaline surged within her, a wild river urging her forward, yet uncertainty clawed at her resolve. In this twilight, Fennel stood at a crossroads, fight or flee, and the stakes had never been higher. The guards' voices sliced through the rustling leaves, their malicious intent clear. "Tonight we reveal everything. No more hiding behind shadows." Fennel froze behind a gnarled oak, its rough bark digging into her palm as her breath quickened, turning shallow. Her mentor's secrets, the very foundation of their trust, teetered on the brink of exposure. How could they betray everything they had fought for? Panic coursed through her. What if she failed? What if she lost her ally? A sudden thought struck her distraction. Fennel scanned the clearing, her gaze landing on a cluster of dry leaves and twigs. Kneeling, she gathered the brittle remnants of the day, hope flickering within her against the encroaching darkness. With a swift motion, she scattered the leaves at the edge of the clearing and dashed deeper into the shadows, heart pounding. Time blurred as she held her breath, straining to hear the guards' reactions. What was that? One of the guards barked, his tone a mix of curiosity and irritation. Fennel's pulse raced. They had taken the bait. She willed herself to remain still, a statue cloaked in twilight, but as she peered around the trunk, dread flooded her. Heavy footsteps approached, deliberate and closing in. The leaves crackled underfoot, and the weight of her decision pressed down on her. Had she acted too soon? Had her mentor's faith in her been misplaced? The guards moved like predators, scanning for movement. As Fennel stepped back, a twig snapped with a sharp crack. They turned, gazes locking onto her with the ferocity of a storm. Panic coursed through her. The dagger still glinted in the fading light, a cruel reminder of the stakes at play. "You," one of them shouted, a sneer curling his lips. "Caught in the act, are we?" Fennel bolted, branches whipping at her face as chaos erupted around her. The clearing faded behind her, filled with shadows and echoes of her mentor's legacy. She fled, lungs burning, the weight of her failures heavy against her chest. What had she done? The fate of her ally hung in the balance, and she had nothing. Moonlight spilled through the thick cypress trees, casting wavering shadows that danced across the damp earth of Whisper's clearing. The air was heavy with the sweet scent of wildflowers, their vibrant colors muted in the night's embrace, while the soft rustle of leaves whispered secrets of this gathering place. Fennel Peregrine stood still. Her heart thrummed against her ribcage, as if trying to escape as the distant murmur of a slow-moving creek layered the atmosphere with an unsettling calm. The cool earth seeped through her thin boots, anchoring her as tension hummed in the thick air. She took in the crumbling stone monument at the center, its surface rough and cracked, a silent witness to countless forgotten stories. This was a place of hope and despair,
and tonight it felt alive with urgency. Fennel crept forward, each step careful on the mossy ground that muffled her movements. The whispers of dissent rose around her, a chorus of murmurs weaving through the branches, sending prickles across her skin. Her gaze flicked to the shadows where the silhouettes of guards loomed, rigid and alert. The damp earth smelled sharper after the storm that had passed earlier, and a chill clung to her skin. A metallic tang coated her tongue, a reminder of the fear that gripped her as she peered toward the monument, shadows pooling around it like a dark shroud. There was no turning back now. She had to reach her ally before the truth slipped away forever. Suddenly, a sharp rustle snapped her attention. A guard stepped into view, eyes glinting in the moonlight, and Fennel's breath hitched in her throat. Panic washed over her, and in that moment she fled behind a thick cypress, the rough bark scraping against her palm as she pressed herself against it, heart pounding. The distant sound of the creek was drowned out by the thunder of her pulse, each thud echoing the urgency of her mission. The guard's footsteps grew closer, the soft crunch of twigs underfoot, a stark contrast to the soothing symphony of nature that had enveloped her moments before. She had to act. With a surge of resolve she darted out, adrenaline coursing through her as she tackled the guard to the ground. The struggle was swift, the rough texture of the stone monument grazing her forearm as she forced him down. A sharp cry pierced the air, her ally's voice, muffled and desperate, igniting a fire within her. She turned, eyes wide, catching a glimpse of him bound to the base of the monument, hope flickering in his gaze. Fennel's pulse quickened as she worked to free him, the cool air mixing with the sweet scent of wildflowers and the acrid smell of sweat and fear. But as she fumbled with the knots, she sensed the
Chapter 6. Emergence in Shadows. Fennel emerged from the shadows, the cool morning air wrapping around her like a cloak, offering fleeting comfort. Whispers clearing awaited, a sanctuary tinged with urgency, sunlight filtering through the trees and dappling the ground in gold. The creek murmured nearby, a steady heartbeat against the encroaching storm. Fennel took a deep breath, filling her lungs with resolve as she approached the clearing, gathering the fragments of determination that had begun to fray in the wake of fear. Allies would gather here beneath the watchful eyes of the trees, and she would not let them down. Not now, not after everything. Each step was a promise, a challenge, a call to arms. The clearing buzzed with anticipation, a tapestry of faces woven together in shared determination. Fennel stood before them, the evidence clutched tightly in her fist, crumpled papers whispering secrets of injustice. "Y'all take a good look around. These ain't just stories. These are our lives, our truths," she called, her voice slicing through the murmurs. Doubt flickered in some eyes, the dominant group lurking at the edges like shadows. But she pressed on. Fennel clenched her fists, determined to stand her ground as her pulse quickened with every word, every breath. Each testimony shared ignited a small flame, and she fed it with her own story, a tale of betrayal and resilience, of a community that would no longer cower. Voices rose, weaving a tapestry of pain and defiance. An elder spoke of lost lands, his hands trembling yet steady in resolve. A mother recounted the day her child had been taken, the hollowness echoing in her words. Fennel watched her, a pang of sympathy rising with each confession, each scar laid bare. They were not alone. The weight of their shared experiences forged an unbreakable bond, a palpable energy that crackled in the air, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. With every story, the tension climbed, and Fennel shouted, "Together we're gonna stand tall. Together we'll make sure our voices are heard." But the dominant group stirred, a murmur rippling through their ranks, eyes narrowing with contempt. A lump formed in Fennel's throat as their leader stepped forward, a sneer twisting his lips. "You think your words matter? You're just a whisper against the storm." He laughed, a cold, harsh laugh that echoed through the clearing, sowing doubt. Fennel met his gaze, unflinching. "Even the softest whispers can turn into mighty roars. We ain't gonna be silenced." The ground beneath them pulsed with energy, the trees standing sentinel as voices rallied, united in a chorus of determination. Fennel raised the crumpled evidence high, the morning sun illuminating the edge. In the heart of Whisper's clearing, the morning sun filtered through the ancient cypress trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground where Fennel Peregrine stood. She inhaled the rich, earthy aroma of wild rice simmering in a nearby pot, mingling with the sweet scent of mossberries,
offered by an elderly woman at the edge of the gathering. The air buzzed with hushed voices, punctuated by the distant calls of fishermen preparing their nets for the day's catch. A small group of children giggled as they indulged in fried dough from a vendor, their faces smeared with sugar. Today the clearing felt charged with an undercurrent of tension, the burden of unspoken stories thick in the air as the gathered community awaited her call to share their truths. Fennel stepped forward. Adrenaline coursed through her veins as she surveyed the faces of her neighbors, some familiar, others etched with caution. Clearing her throat, she steadied herself, feeling the moment stretch taut like a drawn bowstring. "Well now, y'all, today we ain't just here to feast, but to share our stories, stories of hurt that tie us close, just like kin. Let us honor the spirits of the vanished who walked among us, for they still watch over our words." Heads bowed slightly in unison, and Fennel's gaze fell upon Elder Tamsin, her silver hair glinting in the sunlight, standing a few paces away, clutching a bowl of turtle stew. The elder's presence added weight to her call, a reminder of the past that shaped their present. The fierce glimmer in Tamsin's eyes caught Fennel's attention, a beacon of hope amidst the gathering. Skepticism. Fennel gestured toward the spot where the old shrine stood, half hidden among the brambles. The thought of disturbing it brought a cold chill, an unspoken taboo that clung to the air. "We got to dig up our truths, shine a light on the shadows that want to hush us up. Who among us will speak?" A man stepped forward, his hands calloused from years of labor as a fisherman. "I lost my son to the waters when they turned foul, poisoned by those who think only of profit. The wisp warned me, but they wouldn't listen. They take and take, and we are left with nothing but whispers in the dark." The crowd murmured in agreement, some responses turning to gasps as stories of pain began to intermingle with their gathering. One by one, neighbors shared their own experiences of lost crops, of families shattered by greed, of children taken under the guise of care. Each story built a bridge between them, the weight of shared injustice transforming doubt into solidarity, igniting a flicker of hope. As the last story faded into the morning air, Fennel raised her voice, a declaration ringing clear beneath the ancient trees. "Together we'll stand up to him."
Fennel stood at the heart of Whisper's clearing. Her breath quickened as she faced a gathering of wary allies. Shadows danced across their faces, each etched with doubt and fear, but she had only days left to rally them. Their stories, the injustices they endured, hung in the air like unsung melodies, waiting for a voice. If she failed to unmask the conspiracy before the week ended, their chance for unity and safety would slip away forever. "Y'all, we've got to stand together now," she called out, urgency lacing her voice, the weight of time like an unforgiving storm bearing down. 3 days. 3 days to ignite hope or watch despair consume them all. Fennel paced the small clearing, her heart racing, the sun casting long shadows that felt like chains binding her allies in fear. "Look around you," she pleaded. "We are not alone, we have each other," but the murmurs of doubt swelled like a tide threatening to drown her words. "What if they come for us?" A voice cut through the air, heavy with anxiety. The question hung heavily in the air, and Fennel struggled to bridge the gap between fear and resolve. "I know this is frightening," Fennel said, forcing her voice to steady. Sweat trickled down her palms. "But look at the tales that bind us. Each of us has faced our own battles, but together we can rise like the sun after the storm." The crowd wavered, glancing at one another with uncertainty. Time slipped away like sand through their fingers. By dawn it could all change, she shouted, urgency rising in her throat. "We can't let fear dictate our fate." Silence fell, thick and oppressive, but Fennel sensed a flicker of resolve igniting in their eyes. Anya stood alone when they came for her, but she fought back. She found strength in her pain. "We can do the same." As she spoke, the skepticism began to shift, like a gust of wind stirring the leaves. The relentless reminder of their dwindling time loomed over her, weighing heavy in her mind. What if she couldn't convince them? What if they faltered? The crowd began to murmur, a low hum blending into one. Fennel seized the moment, stepping closer, her eyes searching each face. "We must confront our fears together. If we don't, we allow the darkness to win. Remember, it's not just about us, it's about those who will come after us. We owe it to them." Her words sparked a fire, and she could see it spreading, but urgency gnawed at her. They had only days left before the conspiracy cemented itself, and the cost of inaction would be too great. "Let us unite," she cried.
the crowd beginning to stir, the tension shifting as she pushed for resolution. As Fennel's voice rang out, a wave of determination surged through the crowd, their fear morphing into a collective roar of agreement. The shadows transformed from suffocating chains to a backdrop for their newfound unity.
Whisper's clearing hummed with anticipation, tension crackling in the air like static. Fennel Peregrine stood at the center, her heart racing with the weight of their future as the crowd gathered beneath the sprawling branches overhead. Faces reflected a mix of hope and trepidation. Today was critical. She had to unveil the hidden network of allies before the weak slipped away, before the dominant culture snuffed out their chance for justice. Shadows lingered at the edges of the clearing, and the rustle of leaves echoed the minutes slipping by. The moment pressed against Fennel like a heavy stone, and her resolve strengthened with each breath she took. Fennel inhaled sharply, her palms slick with sweat as she stepped forward, gripping the worn pages of her notes tightly. "Y'all gather round now. It's high time we raised our voices. We've kept quiet long enough, and our stories need telling." Her hands trembled. Would they believe her? Would they act? She scanned their faces, searching for signs of resolve, but found only hesitation. The rustle in the trees returned, louder this time. What if the dominant group was already watching? "We gotta hurry, y'all." Fennel pressed on, her determination growing in the face of doubt. "We can't wait for the stars to align, y'all. Every second we sit idle is a second they steal from us." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mixture of fear and determination. They stood on the brink of something monumental, yet the threat loomed larger than ever. "Here's our moment, but I can't do it without y'all. Will you stand with me?" A voice broke through the tension, a skeptical man, arms crossed defiantly. "And what if we fail? What if we attract more danger? We could lose everything." The crowd shifted, uncertainty hanging like a thick fog. Fennel's pulse quickened. Time was not on their side, and pressure mounted. "We can't afford to wait for a perfect moment. Every moment we hesitate is a moment lost to them." A flicker of understanding ignited in the crowd, and one by one, hands began to rise in solidarity, hope weaving through their shared fear. Just as she felt the tide turning, a sharp crack shattered the air, a branch snapping underfoot. A chill raced down her spine. They were not alone. The dominant group had arrived, and their time was up. She locked eyes with the crowd, a mix of fear and determination reflected back at her. "We fight now," she shouted, urgency crashing over them like a wave. Would they stand together, or would this be the moment everything unraveled? Responsibility weighed heavily on Fennel as she faced the crowd, their expressions filled with uncertainty. "This is our chance. Fear will not dictate our fate." Dusk settled over Whisper's clearing, a sun-dappled glade where shadows danced amidst the ancient cypress trees draped with moss. Fennel Peregrine stood at the heart of the gathering, the fading light casting a tapestry of uncertainty across her features. The stories of their newfound allies echoed in her mind, each tale a thread woven into the fabric of their shared struggle against injustice. Time was slipping away. If they didn't act soon, the conspiracy lurking in the darkness would remain unmasked. The week was nearly over, and the consequences of inaction loomed like a storm on the horizon. Fennel needed to gather her courage and share these stories with the community, or despair would suffocate their fight before it even began. The shadows stretched and twisted, mirroring Fennel's inner turmoil. Each ally's story replayed in her head, a cacophony of voices urging her to act, but doubt knotted her stomach, making it hard to breathe. What if she failed? What if the community rejected the truth? The weight of responsibility crashed onto her, heavy and unyielding. She glanced at the gathering, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of the dying sun, a blend of anticipation and apprehension etched in their expressions. With every passing second, the stakes grew higher. If they didn't unite against the looming threat, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for them, but for generations to come. A rustle in the underbrush sent a jolt of fear through her. Fennel scanned the tree line, her pulse quickening as she searched for the source. The air felt thick, almost electric, as if the clearing itself held its breath. What if the dominant cultural group discovered their plans? What if they retaliated? Clenching her fists, Fennel fought against the tide of uncertainty that threatened to pull her under. She needed to speak, to rally them,
but the words felt heavy on her tongue. The week was drawing to a close, and every moment wasted brought them closer to their doom. Her voice trembled as she tried to steady her resolve. We need to share our voices, our stories, or we risk losing everything we fight for. A murmur of agreement from the crowd reassured her, yet the spectre of doubt loomed larger. Could she truly lead them? In her mind, she was a child donning a hero's cape, lost in fantasy. Memories of her own failures flooded her moments, when she had stood by, paralyzed by fear, watching injustices unfold. As shadows deepened, urgency bore down on her, constricting her thoughts. They had to act, but fear of backlash threatened.
Chapter 7. Embers of Resolve. Dusk draped whispers clearing in a cloak of somber shadows, the air thick with anticipation. The community had gathered, a sea of anxious faces framed by the ancient cypress trees, their gnarled branches whispering secrets of the past. At the heart of this assembly stood Fennel Peregrine, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. This was it, the moment to unveil the conspiracy that had haunted their lives for too long. 3 days remained before the truth could be lost to the depths of silence, and she felt the pressure of her community's hopes weighing on her. Drawing a deep breath, she transformed her nerves into determination. Stepping forward to confront the forces that sought to smother their voices, Fennel's voice wavered but grew steadier as she called for silence. "You'll listen here now. We've been led astray, tricked by those who say they're looking out for us. But it's high time we take back our story." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the crowd, uncertainty hanging in the air. A knot tightened in her chest, echoing the urgency of their situation. She pressed on, fueled by the fear that they could lose everything. "They fear our unity, they fear our truth. We've got to stand together." A wave of anxiety rose from the crowd. Fennel scanned their faces, seeking signs of support amidst her own fears. Just as she opened her mouth to speak again, a voice cut through the tension. "And what if they retaliate? What if we lose everything?" Panic surged within her, but she knew they couldn't afford to hesitate. "I know it's risky, but if we just sit on our hands, we'll lose everything we've got." The urgency clawed at her, pushing her forward despite the fear that loomed over them. Then from the back, an elder stepped into view, his voice firm yet shaky. "I've seen too much suffering, too many lives lost to silence. If this is truly our chance, then we must take it. But we've got to be ready for the fight ahead." A ripple of courage spread through the crowd, igniting a fire in Fennel's heart. They began to share their own stories of oppression, their voices rising in defiance. She felt their resolve merge with her own, a collective surge that drowned out the chaos around them. "Together we can break the chains," she shouted, their determination sparking a flame of hope in the dimming light as the final echoes of their rallying cries faded into the twilight. Fennel stood taller, the spirit of defiance transforming her fear into fierce resolve. They had begun to reclaim their narrative, but danger lurked just beyond the shadows. A rustle in the bushes sent a chill through her, the reminder that time was slipping away and the dominant group wouldn't let this stand unchallenged. Twilight cloaked her, as shadows flickered at the edge of whispers clearing, hinting at danger and doubt. The urgency in her bones surged like wildfire, igniting the quiet crowd gathered before her. They stood on the precipice of something monumental, their eyes darting with hesitation. Fear tightened its grip, but the weight of their shared history hung in the air, begging to be spoken. Tonight they would reclaim their truth or let the shadows consume them. The cool air filled her lungs, and she steadied herself. This was it, no turning back. The first stars blinked above, reminders that the night was alive with potential, echoing the struggle ahead. Fennel's voice rose, slicing through the murmurs of uncertainty. "They've tangled us in a web of lies, but we ain't just scraps in their tale." Each word struck the stillness, vibrating through the crowd. Faces turned, some hardened by doubt, others softened by yearning. She paced, feeling the ground beneath her bare feet, anchoring herself in the moment. "We are the stories they buried. Our voices, our truths, they matter." A ripple of unrest surged through the gathering. Fennel paused, her breath catching as she locked eyes with a mother clutching her child. The woman's expression flickered between fear and hope. Fennel leaned closer, her tone gentle, coaxing.
What kind of future we gonna give 'em? One where we stay quiet, or one where they find their own strength? The child's wide eyes glimmered like stars, reflecting the flicker of resolve in the crowd. A spark ignited, a shared heartbeat thrumming beneath the surface. "We've lived in the shadows for too long," Fennel shouted, her voice raw but steady. "This is our moment." A chorus of whispers answered, swelling into murmurs of agreement. She felt them shifting, bodies leaning in, drawn toward her fire. Memories surged, stories of ancestors who fought for their place in the world, pain woven with resilience. "Together we can find our truth. Together we'll take back our story." As her last words faded into the dusk, a wave of conviction washed through the crowd. They stood taller, shoulders squared against the encroaching shadows. Fennel swept her gaze across their faces, marked by newfound resolve. The stakes had never felt more real, yet they gathered like flames ready to burst into a blaze. Would they continue to let fear bind them, or would they rise? The question lingered, heavy and unspoken, as the stars blinked on witnesses to their choice. In that moment, Fennel knew they were ready.
As dusk settled over whispers clearing, urgency and resilience intertwined in the air. Fennel Peregrine stood before the crowd, a fierce conviction coursing through her. Ancient cypress trees framed the gathering like guardians, their mossy limbs whispering secrets of old. At the center loomed a weathered stone monument, cracked and overgrown with vines, a silent witness to struggles forgotten and tales untold. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, and as the first stars began to twinkle above, Fennel scanned the faces around her, seeing the determination in their eyes, ready to rise against the shadows, threatening to engulf them. Fennel stepped forward, her throat tightening as she drew strength from the faces before her. The urgency of her words rippled through the crowd, challenging them to act. "Y'all, listen up. For too long our stories have been turned upside down and we've been hushed. It's time we take back what's ours." Each word resonated, igniting a flicker of hope within the gathered faces as they leaned closer, eager to follow her lead. The ground pulsed beneath her, alive with the rhythm of her heartbeat. Fear and rejection flickered in their expressions, but deeper still lay the embers of resistance. Fennel clenched her fists, grounding herself. "They want us divided, afraid. You know the truth. We have lived it." Her voice rose, fueled by memories of whispered stories and elders' tales carried away by the winds. With each word she forged a connection, drawing them closer together. As the last light of day surrendered to night, Fennel stood resolute against the deepening sky. The crowd rallied behind her, hearts ignited with determination. She raised her arms, inviting their voices to join hers in a chorus that could rattle the very ground beneath them. In that moment, their stories became a lifeblood, each narrative a vital thread in the fabric of their shared identity. The first notes of rebellion echoed through the clearing, and the unspoken question hung in the air. What tales would they weave together? As Fennel stood in Whisper's clearing at dusk, shadows danced among the ancient cypress trees, mingling with the fading light. The atmosphere thrummed with anticipation, a collective energy of hope weighed down by trepidation. The stories they had shared hung in the air, weaving a tapestry of resilience. With arms raised high, she invited and protected them, urging a unified stand against the silence that had long stifled their voices. Yet uncertainty clung to her like a vine, threatening to constrict the very strength they sought to cultivate. Would they unite, or would fear scatter them like leaves in the wind? "We can't just sit here no more, y'all. Our stories, they're the threads that keep us close. Ain't it time we made our move?" Fennel's voice surged through the clearing, fierce and unwavering. She scanned the faces before her, searching for resolve, but her voice cut through the rising swell of enthusiasm. "What if they come for us? What if we provoke them?" The words landed like stones, shattering the fragile resolve. Fennel's heart sank as uncertainty rippled through the crowd, expressions shifting from determination to wariness. Doubts flared, and the threads of unity appeared to unravel before her. Tension thickened in the air, and Fennel inhaled sharply, her pulse racing. "We've shared our truths, y'all. That's where our strength lies, don't you see?" She stepped closer, hands clenched at her sides, the urge to shake them awake almost overwhelming. "They depend on our silence. If we just sit back, their grip'll only get tighter, y'all."
The murmur of dissent grew louder, a wave threatening to drown her voice. The weight of their fear pressed down on her, causing her conviction to waver. A woman shifted in the back, arms crossed tightly over her chest. What if they retaliate? What about our families? Each word struck Fennel hard, a stark reminder of all that was at stake. She fought to swallow the lump in her throat, urgency creeping in alongside vulnerability. But if we do nothing, their grip tightens. Her eyes burned, frustration clawing at her insides. In that moment, she understood the urgency to rally them was becoming increasingly vital. Fennel took a breath, letting the silence stretch, an invitation for reflection. The crowd remained still, uncertainty hanging like a thick fog. She glanced at the horizon, where the last slivers of daylight surrendered to twilight, a reminder that darkness could be both a cover and a catalyst. "We gotta face our fears together, folks. Ain't no other way," she said, her voice steady yet soft, a plea woven with resolve. "What are we if—"
Dusk settled over Whisper's clearing, thickening the air with an electric tension. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that intertwined with vibrant wildflowers defiantly blooming in the gathering gloom. Fennel Peregrine stood at the heart of the crowd, a war drum echoed within her. "Y'all, we've got till the week's end to reclaim our stories, right?" she cried, her voice piercing the murmurs of doubt. A palpable urgency hung in the air, fueled by their shared history and silenced voices. If they didn't unite now, the conspiracy binding their narratives would harden into an unbreakable chain, leaving them forever voiceless. Time pressed on. If they didn't act soon, their momentum would evaporate, leaving them vulnerable and divided. Fennel's words hung in the air, urging the gathered community to confront their fears. Anxiety swept through the crowd, tightening faces and quickening breaths. "We've been silenced for too long. If we stay passive, we'll be erased." She scanned the crowd, noting the struggle within. Some glimmered with hope, while others flickered with dread. A voice from the back shouted, "What if they come for us? We'll be retaliated against." Fennel clenched her fists, sweat prickling her brow. If they didn't rally now, they would lose their chance to confront their fears, and those burdens would fester for generations to come. A flicker of resolve ignited within Fennel. What's fear but a shadow trying to pin us down? She pressed on, her voice steady despite the racing pulse beneath her skin. Every moment we hesitate, we allow their narrative to dominate our lives. We can't let them put their labels on us. As she spoke, the crowd's energy swelled, voices rising in a hesitant chorus. The looming threat of backlash still clung like fog, and she could see glances exchanged, uncertainty clouding their unity. "We've been through so much, y'all. Let's not let fear run our lives, okay?" Fennel shouted, her voice resonating above the rising excitement. "Look around, we are stronger together." She stepped closer to the edge of the gathered crowd, her heart racing against the encroaching silence. One by one, faces began to shift. Murmurs of agreement blossomed into shouts of defiance. "Yes," they cried, some fists raised in solidarity. "We will confront them." Relief surged through Fennel, but with it came a new wave of anxiety. The dominant group would retaliate. She knew it. If they didn't act decisively, that retaliation would come swift and merciless, fracturing the community. As the crowd erupted in a chorus of agreement, Fennel lifted her chin, breathless yet exhilarated. "We gotta get together tonight and figure something out, all right?" she called. "The longer we wait, the easier it will be for them to